This week's Parsha is historically significant in several ways. It's called Parsha Shmos, and Shmos means names. Um, it starts these are the names of the children of Israel who went down to Egypt, and it goes on listing them: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and it lists all the names. The Rebbe says an interesting point. He says when the Jews went to Egypt, even though they were in a foreign culture, surrounded by a foreign nation, the Egyptians, and they weren't even in their own lands, they kept certain things that were uniquely Jewish about them. One of them was their names. And just like they came down as in the names of Reuven, Shimon, Levi, they also left with those names too. And he says the same thing about their clothes and their mannerisms. And the Jews stayed Jewish in Egypt. And it was on this merit that they were redeemed so much before the 400-year exile that was predicted to them. We say that retroactively. We say because, and the other reason it was cut short, it seems, was because of the harshness of the new king who arose. More on that in a second. But basically, because the Jews stayed Jewish, God decided, you know what? They don't have to be here so long. They've proven to me that they're going to be my people forever. I can take them into the desert. I can tell them the entirety of the Torah, 613 commandments, and they're going to respond, Nasiv and Nishma. We will do, and then we will listen. Then we will elucidate further what exactly you meant. So that's why it's significant. And the Rebbe was very big on this point. And this is something even in Lubavitch, I would say, is a little peculiar. The Rebbe said we left Mitzrayim because we kept our names. That's one of the things, one of the merits, and our clothing and everything. And similarly, by this galus, we're going to leave because we're going to still be the same Jews. And it's a nitpicking point. I'm in such an exile in Lubavitch, it doesn't even matter at this point. But I'm just saying, people go Mendy and Esti and Zalmi. I mean, a name is a name, and it shows in an essence. And Hebrew is a perfect language. Even the Yiddish names are with Hebrew letters, to abbreviate and to cut short and to make cutesy and this. I don't know if I'm sure Lubavitchers know their business better than me, but I'm very proud of Hebrew names, and I always ask people, "What's your Hebrew name?" And I try to refer to them in their Hebrew name, because we have to remember something. Even though it seems like we're in America forever, or we're in France forever, in Bolivia forever, it's not the case. We're simply here to do avodas barurim, to elevate sparks that fell and were shattered when the 288 sparks. And not to get into chassidus, but basically that avodah is done now, and pretty soon we're going to all go to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach, according to what the Rebbe said about 17 years ago. That being the case, we're going to all speak Hebrew again. We're going to all know our Jewish names. We're going to speak Aramaic. We're going to know the Talmud, and we're going to elucidate the Torah even further and further. Why go around with my name is Jeff when it's really like Ephraim? Or, be proud of your Jewish identity. This is something that Hashem loves more than anything. Yes, I'm going to make you different. You're the only ones who have to do the 613 commandments. Only the Jews have to do it. Only we heard the revelation at Sinai. Okay, and all future converts, also have to do it. But be proud of it. Be proud of it. And when I was in high school, I went to a high school that was very, how should we say, it didn't have a lot of diversity, to put it nicely. And in such a place, people who are unique or eccentric are always cast aside. Later when we grow up and we find out, now they have Facebook, so you can keep in touch, you see the most interesting people are the ones that in high school everyone kind of give a weird look to. There's one girl named Susan, and she had this shirt that drove me crazy. It said, "Celebrate individuality." And it was like a picture of a person with a stick figure almost face with eyes and squiggly line hairs. And she was a very unique person. I think she wore purple, what do the girls put on their thing? Purple paint on her nails. And etc., etc. She was very, very unique. And she was proud of being unique. And when you're in a town like Livingston, you don't really get much kudos for this, but when you leave and you see the beauty of the human experience is that there's 6.3 different people. Hashem could make that we all are the same. In the what's it called? I think it's the preamble to the Constitution of these lands. They say we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. How come I'm 5'10" and my neighbor is 6'3"? How come I'm with the blue eye and he's with the brown eye? How come I'm with this skin and he's with that skin? How come I can run this fast, he can run that fast? Where is the equality in creation that you're talking about? God is the artist of artisans, and he's got so much in his storehouses. Even twins are strange, but twins is another part of the uniqueness of creation. But think about it, everyone's unique, we look different, we talk different, we think differently about things. We all have the same desires and passions and goals in life, generally speaking. We want peace, we want to be happy, whatever that means to us respectively. But there's no equality in the creation of man, certainly not. And how much more so after the year 2448, when the giving of the Torah happened 3,320 years ago, basically, that now, from this point on, the Jews have to do the Torah, and no one else has to do the Torah. Yeah, you have the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and those 7 mitzvahs that all humanity is commanded upon from the sons of Noach are very, very, when you break them down, and someone did this in Israel, they wrote a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, for just these 7 commandments, and it breaks down the details are very lengthy. And when the non-Jews are going to realize they're going to start learning this, you'll see it's a lot of detail. It's a lot of detail. But they're doing most of them anyway now, just by what's called derech eretz, the ways of the land, being a good person, being a kind person. Happens to be that blasphemy is serious, believing in one God, but like murder, adultery, generally they know these things are wrong. It's accepted, even though they make movies about it that kind of make you desensitized to it. That it's actually it's a sin against God. But either way, so the other reason that this portion is very historically significant. This is the root and the first time we see clearly anti-Semitism. And how do we see it? The Jews, Joseph now has passed away. Joseph was the viceroy in Egypt. He was the second in command to only power himself. And he brought so much blessing onto the land. Even Jacob, his father, came down, and even though they're supposed to have 7 years of famine, because of Jacob's blessing to Pharaoh, they only had 2 years of famine. And Joseph, his son, was able to predict the famine, and store appropriately in the warehouses during the 7 years of abundance, so that no one really suffered. Not only did no one suffer, but he made such a plan. He's the first great Jewish business mind, that the Egyptians had to sell their property back to the government in order to acquire grain, food for themselves. So by the end of this whole famine, you have the Egyptian government is extremely powerful. The citizens are like serfs, basically. They're like living on the land, they're taking care of the land, but they don't own the land. And you have Joseph, the mastermind of it all. This was like the first, if you're impressed with the Rothschild or the Henry Ford, any of these businessmen, this was the first example of a genius, in government. So what happens? He passes away, and then the Torah says like this: a new king arose in Egypt, and he didn't know Joseph. So there's 2 explanations. One, it was actually a new king. This king passed away, a new king came, but this is a little hard to accept historically. So the other thing is, a new king is, the king showed us a new face. When Joseph has passed away, and it's just his brothers, and they're sitting and learning, and they still eat the sheep as opposed to worshiping the sheep like the Egyptians did, he kind of forgets all the good things that Joseph did. And this is anti-Semitism. This ability to forget all the good that Jewish culture has brought into your country, and to suddenly treat the Jews like second-class citizens, and then eventually the Egyptians would be so brazen as to throw our babies into the water. And how do they do it? Because the Jewish women are beautiful women, the most beautiful women in the world. So what did they do? The women they let live. The men who were supposed to marry the women, they started killing as babies. It's there's a word infested that, and infanticide, I think. When you kill a baby, when you throw a baby, it's like one of the sickest, most perverted things you can do. And this was Egyptian culture. When Hashem saw this, he said, "Is enough. You were supposed to be in exile and this and that, but you didn't have to be so harsh about it." And that's why when they left, the punishment was so severe. The 10 plagues were a very severe punishment. God doesn't like punishing anyone. We're all God's children. And the plagues were harsh and harsh up until the last plague, when literally not one household didn't have a dead person. So why was it so tough? They say because the Egyptians didn't have to be so hard on the Jews, and they were. So the point is, and this happens many times. It happened in America. There was a guy, Peter Stuyvesant. He came, the new Dutch trading company, whatever. It was in Albany, the Albany or Rensselaer area. So he came up there and he was doing business, and he wrote back to his sponsor that sent them, "I want to expel these Jewish people. I don't like them. They're no good nicks." I don't know. So they wrote back, "Actually, they're good for commerce. They're good for this, and we're not letting you expel them." He was actually, I don't know if he was the acting lieutenant governor, but they actually, if you go there now, they're so little concerned for anti-Semitism. This is a man who wanted to expel Jews from America. They're so little concerned for anti-Semitism in the country. They've glorified him in this region. There's something called Stuyvesant Plaza. I used to work there, and I always wonder, who is Stuyvesant? And I looked at Peter Stuyvesant, it's shocked to me. But so like Emma Lazarus is a big anti-Semite. Mark Twain's a big anti-Semite. There's a lot of people who Americans glorify, and they just simply hate Jews for no good reason. So that's it. That's Parsha Shmos. That's the beginning of it. Then it's the first Aliyah, and it tells the story. And I just want to say that there's nothing wrong with being proud that you're Jewish. Not only that, it's wrong not to be proud. Jews have the richest history, culture, experience spiritually in the world. God took 3 million people from a desert, put them next to a mountain, and revealed himself through voice and through the wisdom of Moses, our teacher, peace be on him, over the next 40 years, 39, 38 and a half years, would be wandering around the desert, going over Gemara, oral Torah, oral tradition. How do the laws affect us in everyday life? What does it all mean? How are we supposed to better perfect ourselves? Until finally we were able to enter into the land and eventually conquer it. And King David took over Jerusalem forever for the Jews, and he built a temple there, and all the good things that followed. Okay, open to any comments and suggestions and ideas. I think, again, YouTube without Torah, what's the point? Life without Torah, what's the point? How much more so YouTube, where if you accidentally type in the wrong word, you get these videos, images of women and nonsense, it's just... So, Cain Erbil, may the videos of Torah multiply exceedingly. Thank you so much, and God bless.